good evening to you, and thank you for joining us. Welcome to the program. And tonight we're going to be speaking about teenage pregnancy, but the difference will be that we'll be speaking from the different experiences of the different girls across the country that my guests have interacted with or have interfaced with, depending on the kind of work that they're doing and where they're doing it. So my guests, very quickly, Hope Nankunda, who is the Executive Director of Raising Teenagers Uganda. Hope, it's good to have you on the show. Thank you so much for making the time.
And thank you for having me. Thank you.
Great. And not new to this show and to this particular conversation, Annabelle Nakabiri Sebakije. We've spoken quite a bit about this same topic, and it's always good to have you join us and give us more insights. Annabelle is from the Remnant generation. Annabelle, it's good to have you on the show.
Thank you so much, Josephine. Always a pleasure being here with you.
And as you still have the floor, Annabelle, maybe for somebody who is interfacing with you for the very first time, you could speak just briefly about Remnant Generation and the work that you do with teenage mothers, so that we can then give Hope the same space to say the same, and we can start off the conversation.
Thank you, Josephine. The Remnant Generation is an NGO that is Christian-based, and we work with survivors of sexual abuse and teenage mothers. We take these girls through a model that we have finally consolidated into some what we call the 3RT model, which is rescue. We rescue these girls from sexual exploitation, from the streets, from environments of abuse, and bring them into spaces of restoration. And this can be either through our Princess Shelter, which is a home for teenage mothers and girls that have been sexually abused, or through our community-based care program, where we have identified families that are willing to provide safe spaces within communities for teenage mothers. And these can be sometimes biological families, kinship families, or just people in the community that have offered to provide a safe space for teen moms. And we run a program that helps these girls to heal and be restored and repurposed through skilling and education support, and set them on a journey of thriving. Our work really is looking at how we can break the patterns of sexual abuse and repeated pregnancy, because that is one of the other areas where we have found it challenging, that girls get pregnant over and over. When they start giving birth at 13, it is easy for them to keep giving birth until they're like 25. So to break the patterns, we realize that we need a response approach as well, on top of all the preventive approaches that we are having. And we are now working in Kampala. We have offices in Kampala, offices in Diantonde, and also Kasanda district.
The thing that I admire the most about the work that you do is your own journey. I think that got you into coming to where you are, and we had a conversation on that on a previous episode. So for somebody who has not interfaced with Annabelle before and the work that she's doing, we have an episode where she speaks about her own story. Hope, maybe you could tell us a bit about Raising Teenagers Uganda. What do you do, and well, how difficult is it? Do you also have teenagers, Hope?
Yes, we definitely have teenagers, because we are Raising Teenagers Uganda. Raising Teenagers Uganda is an organization that was established in 2014. So we are now 7 years old, and we mainly work to empower young girls and ensure that they stay in school until they complete education. And we emphasize that because we know it's one measure that can be used to put an end to child marriage, which has become an issue globally as we talk now. Raising Teenagers Uganda mainly works on education. Like I said, we do provide some sponsorship programs for very, very needed children. And these are supported by our well-wishers. We don't have a fund that has this money for paying for children, but we've had well-wishers who follow our work online, and they just call and say, can I support one child? Can I support two? And that's how we are able to support a few girls to be able to attend school and complete. We also concentrate so much on menstrual hygiene, because we realize that most of the girls are forced to drop out of school because they can't afford the costs that come with starting off their menstruation cycles. And of course, some parents take it as an excuse to get them out of school because they are already vulnerable and they can't access sanitary wear. So we make sure that we reach out to the most underprivileged girls. We also do advocacy, because we know that this is a message that needs to reach everyone and to be appreciated by everyone. So we try to involve as many actors as possible so that the agenda is not thrown along the way.
So I have a question for you, Hope. You mentioned, so the organization is called Raising Teenagers Uganda, but everything you've said is speaking about girls. Are there boys in your organization? Do you cater for them? There's always these questions about leaving the boy child behind and so on. So I assumed that Raising Teenagers Uganda also had a section for them.
Yes, we have a program for boys as well, because like you hear, it is Teenagers Uganda, and boys are also teens. So even I wanted to put it clear that our program mainly ran in schools. So when the lockdown came, our work was kind of disturbed. We couldn't access our young people the way we used to. And that is when we thought of now coming up with community clubs, where the boys are included and the girls are equally included.
Thank you for that clarification. So I think my first question for the two of you was, we see the numbers. We see the numbers of teenage pregnancies reported in newspapers. We hear all of these cases reported on TV, on radio, but usually it's one district. Usually it's isolated pockets of the country. It'd be nice to know, from the work that you do, from moving up and down and interacting with different communities, do you have a sense of numbers that we can look at that paint the picture of what it really looks like in the country and how bad the situation is? I'm going to start with you, Annabelle.
I really pray and hope there will be a time when we come onto a show like this and we are talking about how many numbers of girls are thriving and not having, how Uganda is hitting the milestones in child protection. But unfortunately, the situation keeps on getting worse by the day. Just recently, we have received reports when we had an engagement with Kampala City Council Authority. And, we had a feedback that the numbers that were recorded in the police reports have gone up almost 3 times. We now are seeing 20,000 cases of teenage pregnant girls in Kampala district. And initially we would think that, okay, there is exceptions with the Busoga region, there is exceptions with northern Uganda, but it is now everywhere. Like, there is not a thing of, it is now about a rural setting or something like that. We did a food distribution last week in our immediate community in Natete, where our offices are for Kampala. And there is a particular zone, Chitaka. And we went in and found a settlement of girls sleeping in rented spaces. And the eldest among these girls was only about, I think, 20 years. And these are girls that had come in from the villages, and they had been brought to Kampala to work as sex workers. And some of them were pregnant, others were just there because now the bars are closed, the happening places are closed, so now they don't have customers. We also found girls that are on the street, that have grown up on the streets of Kampala. All they have known is street life. And these girls, they have nowhere to go. While everyone is locked down and business activities locked down, they have nowhere to go. So in as much as there is rural vulnerability, it is equally true that we have urban vulnerability as well, especially in the slum settlements. These guys behind the gates, where fathers are taking advantage of their daughters, where uncles are taking advantage of their, of children that they're supposed to be protecting. And so the situation keeps getting worse, Josephine, and we are really concerned. I'm sure maybe some of us saw that news article that came out, 14,000 girls. 14,000 girls that were abused last year, and 300 cases were of people that were HIV positive. And it just beats your mind to think about what the future of Uganda looks like when we have all these cases going up, and many are not even reported.
The thing that I wanted us to do, particularly with this episode, was to share stories of the girls that you've interacted with, what's happening with them. So, for example, in the refugee settlements, what have you found that are the common stories that these girls come with to you, to your organizations?
Okay. I think what is common right now within the settlement and the host communities is the fact that the girls are either escaping from home for different reasons, but also others being forced into marriage in exchange for food. Actually, this is the commonest, where parents, homes which have many numbers, believe that if a girl is 14 and there's no food at home, it is okay to exchange that girl and they get some bit of cassava, some bit of beans, and then the girl is just born. And this is happening. It's in broad daylight. It's been recorded. We've seen these girls. We've interacted with them. We've rescued some. We have tried to rescue about, I think, 6 girls who we have integrated back into their families after having a series of discussions with their parents, for them to realize that even when you give away your daughter in exchange for food, this food will get finished. So what will you give away later? So some of the parents have been able to understand, and they are now have accepted their children to come back home and are already taking care of these children, while others are already into marriage and also struggling to find a way to escape from marriage, because once they get there, then it's completely difficult for them. An example from the refugee center, I think what I want to bring out when it comes to boys and girls is we've interacted with this girl who was 14 years old and was in P6 when the lockdown was announced, and she got pregnant in the lockdown by a senior 6 boy. And by the time we got in touch with the girl, whereas she was 4 months pregnant and at home, the boy had already gone back to school as a finalist, because they said candidates should go back to school. And here we meet the parents of the girl, and the parents are asking their daughter, can you go and stay in the boy's family? Because they are the ones responsible for your pregnancy. It is that serious that even when the boy is in school studying, parents believe that this girl is pregnant and doesn't belong in their home. And it explains how much work we have to explain to parents that yes, a girl could make a mistake and get pregnant, but we don't have to force her into marriage. And this is an issue that is happening over and over again that needs serious attention as we head into these discussions.
Hope, you said something there. You said you tell the parents that a girl could make a mistake and get pregnant. And we seem to be throwing it at the girl. And there are different situations that bring us to the point of teenage pregnancy. Yeah. So I think, and I think I know what you meant, but I want us to come back from this break, and then we can also paint those scenarios that get us to the high numbers of teenage pregnancies that we are speaking about, even as Annabelle shares her own experience and stories from the young women that she's interacted, from the young girls that she's interacted with. Let's take a short break. Right. We'll be right back. Welcome back. Thank you for staying with us. We're having a conversation with Hope Nankunda and Annabelle Nakabiri-Sabakije on teenage pregnancies. And before we took a break, Hope had shared a story, but before Annabelle shares stories from the girls that she has interfaced with, I wanted us to look at what particular challenges are driving teenage pregnancies. And I don't know, Annabelle, if you want to start, or Hope, if you want to start, because there's stories of rape, there's defilement, then there's incest. What else is there that we need to know that's happening?
I think the very serious driver now for child marriage during the lockdown, I would link it to poverty. I don't like blaming poverty for many things, but this time the lockdown has really pushed so many people on the wall, And for girls who are starving, for girls who are struggling to find means to manage their menstrual issues, anything they'll get will be enough for them to go and exchange their bodies. We must realize that we have parents who last bought sanitary pads for their daughters when they were going to school, because some parents believe that you only buy sanitary pads if they are on a shopping list. So definitely with the lockdown, there is no shopping list. So the most of the girls I've interacted with, it is lacking basic needs that has pushed them. But also I must say that domestic violence during the lockdown has forced many girls to run away from home. They find any other place safer than seeing their parents fighting in a home. You must have seen videos online, some men using pangas to just cut women into pieces, and the other way around. There are children who can't face that. There are children who can't say, I will just be strong and stay here. So I've seen girls who have come to me and they say, I cannot go back home to see my parents fight every day the way they do. And while they move out, anyone who is ready to open a door for these girls will definitely take advantage of their situation. But remember, these are challenges we can address as adults and be able to keep these children safe in their homes. So those are two key issues that really still stand out. And unless they are addressed by the people, the stakeholders themselves, parents, caregivers, then the girls will continue to escape from home, and the repercussions are very clear.
Annabelle, do you want to add on that?
Thank you so much, Josephine. And I know that you can notice I have changed location. My background is different. We are getting, into all this new normal thing and trying to make technology work. So I hope this is better connection right here. And you asked a question about what is driving the increase in the numbers of teenage pregnancy during this season. And just like Hope has mentioned, of course, there is pressure at home because of the breakdown in economic systems, the violence that is happening in the houses, but also we are equally seeing the frustration that that came as a result of the close down of schools. There is this whole thing that we used to think that schools are not safe, our kids don't like school, but we are now actually realizing that schools were such a safe space, like a protective environment for children, especially the girls and the boys as well. And because of that, like the parents are so tired, like they're tired of having to run after children at home, like just who is where, what are they doing? The children are also tired of being at home. We have, for example, a 13-year-old girl who we had taken back to school, and she was in P3. She had given birth, gone back to school in P3, and she's been in P3 for now 3 years, and she feels like, I don't want to go back. I'm growing up. I was 13, now went to 14. I'm making 15, and I'm still in primary 3. So this frustration is bringing children to a place of feeling they have overgrown, and now they are looking at other alternatives of survival. So, and that is why parents are looking at their daughters as grown-up women. And when children are at home, there is a way they just grow up very fast. I don't know, but there is just, and then men that are preying on them are seeing them as grown-ups, and yet they are really, really children. And the other issue about incest that breaks my heart a lot is that we have men that have decided to take advantage of their children, fathers, uncles, grandparents that are taking advantage of the fact that they are not working, they are stressed, they have issues with their wives, and now they are turning their own daughters into sex objects. Recently, I got a message. It was actually last week. I got a very disturbing message in my inbox, and it was from a mother who had watched me on the show, and she texted to ask, what can I do? I heard you talking about girls, and I just called my man. She sent me this message in Uganda and a very painful voice note, and she was explaining how she found out about 3 days ago. By the time she sent the message, it had been 3 days after the incident had happened, that she had found out that her husband has been sleeping with their 10-year-old daughter, and
his excuse was that because the mother is always working, the man was a taxi driver, and he's frustrated that taxis are not working, and then he feels the woman is not giving him enough respect, and she's not giving her enough sex and all those different things. And so he took advantage of their own 10-year-old child. And then we are also seeing all these cases that are coming in from the probation offices, that are coming in from police, of the gang rapes that are happening, because the boys are just walking around. They are playing football, they are going to the well doing nothing. Now many of them are onto drugs, and they are getting there and getting these girls where they go to fetch water. They are getting these girls when they go to graze the cattle, and they are taking advantage of the fact that they are at home and they are idle and they are doing nothing. And I think the general frustration with the COVID, with the, there's just now, I've had, I think Hope was sharing the same thing, that we are seeing more parents sharing how a burden it has become to look after their own children at home. They feel like they are too stressed. It's such a big burden to have these children month to month, as opposed to having them once in a while when they come back from school for holiday. So these things, coupled with all the fact that there is struggle to access food, there is struggle to access healthcare services, it is increasing the cases of abuse that we are registering. Yes.
Thank you, Annabelle. The stories you always share are very heartbreaking. Do you have any stories from, again, I mentioned earlier that this conversation was going to be mostly about the stories that you've interfaced with that will pinch us to start taking action. Do you or Hope have any other stories that you'd like to share with us of the girls that you've interacted with?
Yes, Josephine, I would want to share a story of one girl that was able to return to school when they were asked as finalists to go back to school, and yet she was pregnant. We realized that towards October last year, the Ministry of Education allowed pregnant girls to go back to school and complete their education, which was good, a very good step. But we also should realize that it is not so easy for a pregnant girl to walk into a school where she used to be, where she had very good friends. They all had dreams. They had, something they believed they would do in future. And here she is pregnant, and we expect her to just walk to class and sit down. So while we appreciate that it was good, it's also important for the government to know that supporting pregnant girls to go back to school calls for psychosocial support and preparing this child. And when that happens, we knew that there was a problem, that even if they've said go back to school, they will not. And indeed it was right, because the few, I think 3 girls who we followed up and they were able to go back to school, they had refused in the first place. How do we get to school? They're going to laugh at us. It's only in Kamuli where we went, and there's this girl who was already at school and pregnant. She was 6 months pregnant. And when we got to the school, I did not know she was there. We had gone there generally to meet the girls and talk to them about completing their education, because they need this motivation over and over again. And while we were there, the headmistress called me in her office and said, by the way, we have one girl here who is pregnant. She's trying to cover herself and put on big sweaters, but I really know that she's pregnant. And whereas I want to help her and talk to her and encourage her, I don't even know what to tell her. So this explains how much need there is, because even those who we are sending, who are expecting to teach these children, need to know how to approach them. So the first work we did was now to do counseling for the head teacher and explain to her how well they can help the child. And then get to the students and talk to them about not making fun of the girl. Because I got to meet the girl, I asked her, she didn't hide anything, she told me the truth. She told me the man who got her pregnant was, I think, had come to the village for some time, and then he left. He doesn't even know where the man is. He left and went back, they said he went back to the city. He doesn't know which city and where, And she told me the reason why she got into this is because she did not have anything to eat. There was no food. She needed some things to manage herself as a girl. And she was, on top of that, she used to pay her own school fees. So even from senior 1, senior 2, senior 3, she would go to the garden, dig, earn some money, come and pay the school, like in bits. That showed, and it explains why she went to school even before anyone would encourage her, please don't feel shy. She knew she wanted to go to school. But here she was, pregnant, in class, children are laughing at her, teachers are scared of her, and we had to do the psychosocial support part with the school and the girl, which worked well. And she gave birth, I think, 1 week towards her exams. But you realize that there are many girls that could have actually gone back to school and do the exams, but they did not because there was no one to say, look here, you can do this. And this is what young girls need right now, so many of them. But I'm also concerned about the case of Nakabidi, what you've just shared, the man who is sleeping with the 10-year-old daughter. Have you tried to follow up? Can we know where he is? Can we arrest this guy?
Yes, Annabelle, please let us know what's happening with the 10-year-old.
So what is happening with the 10-year-old is that the mother, after reaching out and engaging, she mustered the courage to definitely report the case to police. And the man has been got. He's actually in custody. And we are engaging the mother right now. She needed a lot of help to deal with the reality that her child had been going through this for quite some time and she was not aware. And she was blaming herself and feeling like she's a failed mother. She's failed as a mother, and then she has other children that and then the father is in prison and struggling to know how to feed. So we have managed to extend counseling, and of course we are hopeful that justice will be served. And some of the other cases that are coming in, Josephine, is during this season, because we were coming from the 2020 lockdown, and we had seen the increase in numbers of girls getting pregnant. And we were already worried about the baby boom that was coming. Okay, so that the girls, some of them went back to school, others never went back to school, and maybe they will never go back to school if no one gives them the opportunity. So we're worried about the baby boom that was happening. How are they going to manage? How are they going to afford the services? And it was already a pressure and a stress. And then we get into a second phase of the lockdown. So where the girls that got pregnant last year, and some of those that got pregnant in the beginning of the year, and now should be going to antenatal services, are ready to give birth. They should be delivering babies at hospitals, but they cannot even afford to get to hospitals. So through the community-based care program, we are getting to meet all these girls from the rural areas, in the Antonde, in Luka district, in Kasanda, that are walking miles to just go for an antenatal visit. And then they get there and they don't even have ultrasound scan services. They don't have money to pay for, specific attention from the doctors. They are trying out at government health facilities. And because of COVID situations, the pressure for healthcare has been really, really, really high. So we are managing, then you have to get borders, and then there is special permits to travel, which has been a challenge in access to services, and which stand a very high risk of losing our girls if there is no intervention. Yesterday, in one day, we had 2 girls that needed to go in for an emergency C-section. And it was, one of them was 37 weeks pregnant. And it is a border ride is 45 minutes from her home to the hospital. And they didn't have the money to even pay for the border, And so they had now to call to get somebody to send money to, and then get the border, and then come to hospital and get there with nothing. So then somebody needs to step in, call, and find out how do we become of help. And I think this is where, as Ugandans, we need to wake up to the reality that we have a generation of children that have become mothers, and they're not, of course, ready, but they're also not accessing the services to help them walk through this season, with dignity, with life. No wonder we are still seeing 17.4% of the maternal child death being as a result of teenage pregnancy. And that is a very high rate. And that is where we need to now come together and find lasting solutions to access to services, health services, healthcare, feeding, clothing, basic education support to help us break the patterns, because these patterns have to end. This story has to change. And it's going to take all of us doing something at the preventive, but also at the responsive end.
Annabelle, thank you for that. I'm going to ask that we take another quick break, and when we come back, we'll be speaking about some of the interventions that your respective organizations are putting in place to help these young girls, and also really to help institutions that have to, and when I speak about institutions, I'm speaking about family institutions, schools, and so on, that have to play their part as well in keeping these young girls safe. We'll be right back. Welcome back. Thank you for staying with us. We're speaking about teenage pregnancies. We've had quite a bit of interactions with internet connectivity for some of our guests, but somehow we're getting through. And this is an important enough conversation that both Hope and Annabelle have kept on with it. So Hope and Annabelle, we have about a few more minutes to go. And I wanted us to speak about what's working elsewhere, what can work for us, what are solutions that we're looking at, and how do we participate, the rest of us who are not in organizations that are doing the life-changing work that you're doing with these teenage mothers, but also institutions that are where the girl child is placed, in families, in schools, and in all these places. Where are the solutions?
So what we can copy globally around the world is our response to crisis, our response to challenges of humanity is taking action, being out of the place where we are only complaining about the problem and we are saying, here we are to be part of the solution. These children, Josephine, are our children. 28% of teenage girls in Uganda being pregnant means that these are girls that potentially, without our intervention, may never be able to thrive according, they are going to keep giving birth when they're young. The chances of them dying while giving birth are very high. It is possible they're going to be married off when they're very young, and it is just going to increase our dependency levels, puts the whole country at a very high risk. The future becomes very, very doubtable. So what we need to do is to realize that our response is needed, and it is needed urgently. This is not an issue for NGOs only. This is not an issue for government. This is just not an issue for schools. It is an issue for all of us, and all of us have an equal opportunity to rewrite the story of Uganda, to break the chains and the patterns of abuse. We've launched a campaign, Josephine, that we've called the 1,000 Faces of Change. And our goal is to reach 1,000 teenage mothers in every year, like in a space of every 12 months, for us to be able to reach at least 1,000 teenage mothers and survivors of sexual abuse. And when we say 1,000 teenage mothers, Josephine, it's also possible, that also means that there is potentially 1,000 babies if we don't have twins and triplets in there. So it is an opportunity for every Ugandan to give towards a cause that is helping to redeem a generation and a future of 1,000 girls. We are working currently in Lyantonde, in Kasanda, in Kampala, and also Luka district, where we want to be. We are collaborating with local health centers there. We are collaborating with churches. We are getting the village health teams to identify the most vulnerable girls. We know that the need is big, but through this campaign, we are reaching out to the most vulnerable girls, those girls that don't have access to healthcare services, those girls that don't have access to food, those girls that cannot even have, they don't even have baby clothes, they don't even have the luxury of having, diapers, or even affording to go for and get an ultrasound scan. And we are inviting every Ugandan to give from as small as 1,000 shillings, which many people will call change. We want to see, we give an opportunity to young people, to the corporate people. We want to give an opportunity to, every ordinary Ugandan to make a difference in breaking the patterns of repeated abuse and child marriage and teenage pregnancy. So this campaign is running on all our social media platforms of the Remnant generation. We are having amazing friends and celebrity personalities from media, from the music industry, including you, Josephine Karunji, and raise a voice with us and say, it is our responsibility as Ugandans. We are not going to sit back and wait for just donor support. We are not going to sit back and think this is a problem that is going to be solved by international NGOs. We are going to rise up as Ugandans, as parents, as sisters, as brothers, as leaders, as teachers, and give of our finances, and give of our expertise, and give of our time to see that we are saving lives. And this opportunity is right now available, and everyone is welcome to participate in it.
Talking about solutions to the current problem, as Raising Teenagers Uganda, we have chosen to believe that everyone out there can play something, can play a role. We are saying you don't have to be so important for you to come up and say, I'm touching this girl's hand or supporting her to go through this. We are saying we can all partner and work together. And how we have embraced partnership is specifically for us, we have said it's important for now to partner with the church. We are working in partnership with religious leaders who have embraced our program, and they have chosen to join our campaign. And right now, they move every time they go to church to speak about on Sunday service, they have to bring in a message of child protection, to talk to parents about teenage pregnancy and its dangers, and also to encourage parents to create a safe environment at home that will encourage children to stay home. So we realize that when we bring religious leaders into our own work, we are able to reach thousands of parents that we can never meet at all, because these parents come to church every Sunday. These parents tune into radios to listen to their religious leaders. And therefore, if our message is passed on by a person that they trust so much, we are believing that it is creating a very serious positive change. But also we have involved government officials, especially on the district program. We work with parasocial workers, and these are people who have been trained by government to work in different communities and sensitized communities. So what we've had to do is to include them in our program as our champions, so that even when we can't reach those places because of the lockdown, whenever they are able to meet young people in their communities, our message of staying safe and keeping safe and not running away into marriage is shared with these girls. We have also chosen to partner with the media. We are trying to say that it is not over, even for the pregnant girls. Because while we see these numbers go high, we don't want the pregnant girls to think that life has come to an end. We are saying this is a phase, but you can still pull yourself together, hold yourself together, and resume school when the time comes. And we want to encourage each and every one, especially parents. Parents tend to believe that pregnancy means the end of education. We are saying that's not true. All we want is for you to encourage your child. And if you can take care of that grandchild who is born, it's good enough. Take your child back to school, support them to complete school. We have seen many young mothers who have gone back to school and completed, and we are saying yours will not be an exception. So we need to embrace that and believe that even when this has happened, we can still change the stories of these millions of girls that are actually becoming victims of teenage pregnancy across the globe. But in Uganda, like Annabelle has said, if the first police report was 14,000, that was already big enough, and now you hear it has tripled. That's how far the problem is. We cannot afford to lose a generation because we are choosing to think that pregnancy means lack of end of education. Let us support girls to resume education when the schools open, so that they can still achieve their dreams that they have held so dearly for years.
What do we begin to do different? When we speak, we generally speak about parents, we generally speak about the government, we speak about schools and so on. What do we do as individuals, as girls who are stuck at home or who are going back to school, how do we start to do things different to help ourselves, if at all we can?
To the girls out there, I know so much time has passed already. So many are worried that the age is going up, they are still in the same class. And I want to assure you that it's not over. But also I always encourage young people and assure them that within each and every one of us, there is that gift that we have. And this gift may not be even to do with academics. You may be good at music, you may be good at sports, you may be good at writing, maybe you can do a wonderful poem. I want to encourage young people to find within themselves a way to discover that talent within you. While you are at home right now and wondering what to do with yourself, I know I love bringing out the issue of social media and access to internet, especially for the young people. Many young people have access to phones, they have access to information, but can we use these phones? Can we use our data for productive reasons? There are so many things you can learn, for example, from YouTube. There are many people who have trained themselves on how to make different items from YouTube by sitting and watching the videos and learning how to do particular things. I want to encourage you that there's a lot you can pick and still feel complete, because at the end of the day, even when you have gone back to school and completed your education, you still need that skill that makes you believe in yourself and earn a living. We are seeing unemployment levels. It didn't come because of the lockdown, even before that. But if you have a skill with you, you cannot suffer like anyone who doesn't have. And lastly, when schools open, don't look at your age and say, I have overgrown, I cannot go back to school, how will I enter the class? I'm telling you, this has affected everyone, and you're not any different. If you still want to achieve your dream in future, the only shortcut is going back to school and completing your education.
Thank you, Hope. I think it's easy for you to think that you are the only individual who is growing during this pandemic without going forward. But I think what you say is right, that they need to remember that there was a whole class that they were with that's also growing older, having a birthday each year and still staying in the same situation. But of course, we know that there are other, students who are able to afford schools where they can go to school online and progress, but still there's quite a number that are still in that situation. Thank you so much, Hope and Annabelle, for taking the time to speak with us. That brings us to the end of our show for tonight. Coming up is NTV Weekend Edition.